All right, good evening, everybody. So it's a pleasure to be with you all in community today on this Thursday evening during finals period. My name is Devin Deane. I'm a graduating MSW student. And today we'll be in conversation with Melanated Social Work, a group of four social workers of color who do the Renowned podcast. So we're gonna introduce them one at a time, and this is a virtual setting, but I want y'all to light up the comment section, use emojis as we introduce each of one of our guests tonight. So first, I would like to introduce to the virtual stage Jesse Whitley. Uh, Jesse is a co-founder of Melanated Social Work, a licensed clinical social worker. Jesse has provided mental health services to young people and their families for over a decade. He was always passionate about helping his community, originally planned on becoming a doctor. But while working on a suicide hotline, he witnessed the impact that divestment and mental health services had on communities and became committed to serving his community as a therapist. Jesse is a first generation college graduate, having received his BA in molecular and cell biology from UC Berkeley. He also obtained a Master of Social Work from Boston School of Social Work, where he met the other members of Melanated Social Work. Jesse is passionate about decolonizing mental health practices and shifting models of healing of healing towards collective care. Jesse was born and raised in the Bay Area, a veteran of the Hype movement, and an official Bay pedestrian. Welcome up to the virtual stage. Next, we have Marvin Tolliver. Marvin is a co-founder of Melanated Social Work and also is a licensed clinical social worker, currently working as a therapist with the Radical Therapy Center in Philly, PA. Marvin is someone who has always gravitated towards leadership roles, both in his personal and professional life. At an early age, Marvin recognized the power he had in encouraging and influencing others, and has had several positions that help cultivate that power. Marvin has served with City of Miami, working with Treasure Island Job Corps, held various positions within education that helped shape who he is as a Black man navigating the world. Marvin makes it a point to use his power to fight for a change in tackling issues of racism, white supremacy. He also uses his power to uplift the Black community, LGBTQ community, and other groups who have been marginalized in America, especially Black women. Marvin is also a creator, writer, consultant, and public speaker, and wants to encourage others to see the power within themselves, use their voice to fight for justice. Next, I'd like to welcome Josh McNeil. Josh is a co-founder of Melanated Social Work, licensed certified social worker. Josh loves being a therapist and his ability to hold people's stories while helping them navigate trauma. As a Black man, he is particularly passionate about destigmatizing mental health in the Black community. Josh uses his clinical social work skills to bring healing to Black communities in New York City and Boston. Finally, but not least, I'd like to introduce Michael Grinland to the stage. Michael is a licensed certified social worker. Michael has always had an entrepreneurial spirit, ambition to serve his community. As a Minnesota native, he received his BA in psychology from Carleton College and Master's of Social Work from Boston College School of Social Work. Michael is a skillful advocate for social justice in the mental health space with extensive experience providing clinical service to children, youth, and family. He is trained in several therapeutic modalities and currently serving as staff at Williams College Integrative Wellbeing Service. Prior to working in college mental health, he provided clinical services for the Department of Family Service in Fairfax, Virginia, Justice Resource Institute, and Weedico Children's Services. Michael is an avid hoops fan and chess player. Michael brings the perspectives of a millennial, Black, biracial man into the field of social work, where less than 10% of social workers identify as a man and under 34, and even a small percentage identify as a man of color. Michael is focused on building community, supporting the mental well-being of students of color in higher educations. More specifically, he is passionate about empowering the students who identify as men of color. Woo! Shout out to all of Melanated Social Work, all these well-established and accomplished people that we're in community with tonight. So,
folks are welcome to like turn their camera on too, like be in the space with us, you know what I mean?
They might want that podcast feel though, so they probably just chilling, like laying down or whatever. That's cool too. That's cool too.
Yeah, that's solid.
Yeah. So glad to be in community with y'all tonight and be able to hold this conversation with y'all. Before we begin, I want to give a special shout out to the GSA members who made this happen. I'd like to remind everybody this is a student-led event. There's a lot of work that went behind the scenes to make this happen during finals week when people are also graduating, people are doing all this work as well. So a special shout out to Nani, Lucas, and Claire for making this happen and bringing us all into this space together tonight. So to begin, I would like to, have y'all, introduce yourselves a little more and just, speak about who you are and what brought you to the field of social work.
Marvin, kick it off. Go for it.
Yeah. I thought we were going to go in the order in which we were introduced, so I was waiting on you, Jesse.
Oh, okay.
That's all good. Good afternoon, evening, everybody. I'm Marvin Tolliver, licensed clinical social worker I'm based in Philadelphia, but I'm actually here in Oakland, California right now, where I was born and raised. Excited to be here. Sending love and solidarity to the Lenni Lenape tribe, whose stolen land we're on in Philadelphia, and the Ohlone land that we're on here in Oakland. Yes, I'm with a private practice called the Radical Therapy Center. We prioritize folks with marginalized identities, so people of color, queer folks, immigrants. We like to say that we created that space for folks like us. We all identify as queer folks of color. I identify as a queer bisexual man of color. Just happy to be in community with y'all. Have done a lot of work in violence and prevention, been in schools, served with City Year Miami. So if folks know of City Year, I've done that for a couple of years, and just fighting for Black liberation and to dismantle systems rooted in white supremacy. So thank y'all for being here. Happy birthday, Jesse. Happy belated birthday to you too. A lot of folks are showing you love in the chat. But I will pass it. Oh, and I use he and they pronouns today. I'm gonna pass it to the birthday boy then.
For sure, man. Thanks, y'all. It's been a blessing. It's a great birthday week. Folks don't know the area code here in Oakland is 510 in the East Bay, and I'm born on May 10th, so I'm officially Mr. 510. But yeah, want to start by saying Eid Mubarak. Thank y'all for having us today. My name is Jesse. Today I'm using he and they pronouns. Like Marvin said, we're currently on the stolen land of the Ohlone tribe, so sending all love, power, and strength to the folks that have tended this land for centuries. And I work primarily as a school-based clinician. I've been working in the public schools here in the East Bay for about 10 years now. And currently I work as a therapist in a high school program at the high school that I graduated from, doing individual, group, and family therapy with young people. Outside of that, I'm also like an organizer, an activist. And I think the concise piece of like what has drawn me to this work and being a social worker is that this is the role, this is the part that I play towards our path towards liberation. I think we all plug into that in some way, and my role is to be a healer and hold other people's stories so that we can further ourselves towards liberation. And I'll pass it to the fam, Michael.
Appreciate it. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, word. My name is Michael. I use he, him pronouns. I am in Williamstown, Mass. I'm on Mohican territory, and I am the product of a single parent's prayers. Born and raised in Minnesota, I've worked in residential placements. I've worked as an in-home family therapist. I've worked in a middle school as a therapist, and I'm currently in college mental health. I've also worked for the Department of Family Services in Fairfax County, Virginia. Yeah, and I'm happy to be in community with you all today. And pass it to
Bro,
my
you just gonna leave out the fact that you work for the NBA?
And I am also a new player wellness counselor with the MBPA. So I just started that role, and in typical social work fashion, can't just have one job, have to have a couple of them. So, but yeah, appreciate you, Jesse. And I'm gonna pass it to my brother, Josh.
Welcome. As Julius Randle, person on my jersey says, we here. The Knicks in the playoffs, starting off like that. I'm not in New York right now, but New York will always be a part of me. I am on the Ponzant land and in another place. I'm a product of a single parent household. I'm currently in university counseling as a diversity and inclusion mental health counselor. I've worked in a hospital in a violence recovery and prevention setting. I worked at a paternal mental health clinic. I've also worked as a case manager and clinical social worker in Brooklyn and Harlem. Um, Free Palestine as always. I identify with the He series. I am now a University of Alabama doctor of social work student. Um, and what brought me to the field is just there's so many opportunities for Black men to be healers and to heal Black men. There's not a lot of spaces. We get jail. That's about it. So why not do yoga, Reiki, and other forms of healing under my social work license for African American men? And that's why I'm here.
Thank you all. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. And shout out to, give them, a round of applause, give them their flowers, um, so yeah. One of our themes that, we want to discuss tonight is the idea of like anti-oppressive practice and the ethos around that. So if we could begin, our first conversation around the idea of how do you practice liberatory social work in spaces that are not designed for liberatory practices, as we all kind of realize, especially as people of color and men of color in this space. So feel free, whoever feels most comfortable jumping in to start.
Yeah, I think for us, like part of that process was like founding Melanated Social Work. That was like a liberatory action for us because it was very much grounded in our own wellness. And that kind of happened around the time that we transitioned outside of grad school, and realizing the ways in which that like the field was not set up to necessarily like support us in our journey as becoming like holistic healers and supporting us in like staying well as we continue to like enter into the field. And so we thought that like we just needed to support each other through that process. And so I think that was one liberatory action, in that we were asserting that we were not going to abide by the norms of the spaces that we were walking into. Obviously, we needed to work, we needed to live, we needed to exist in this world, but we also were not going to allow that to like change us or force us into these like oppressive norms that tend to operate in these spaces. But it was very much like having this team and having this group and home base of being able to like touch base with them, check in with folks, bounce ideas off of each other, that kind of just kept me grounded personally. And so I think a big part of that is just the dialogue that we hold together and constantly challenging and questioning what are the things that we learn, where did they come from, and how can we start to instill the things that we just know to feel right in our body, right? Like there's like the knowledge that we have attained from school, and most of that it being originated by white cis het men, and primarily serving white communities. And then there's the things that we know just from our lived experience, from being in community with folks, from the soil that we come from, things that we feel and know in our body that are real and guided towards healing, but maybe aren't reflected in the field. And so I have these folks here that are constantly like gassing me when I start to feel that sense of like imposter syndrome in my workspace. Yeah.
Sorry, Mike, I thought you unmuted. So for me, it's really about decolonizing the work, right? And so like Jesse said, a lot of what we're taught in social work school and even larger in pretty much all mental health schools and courses and things like that, again, is created by white men, cishet white men for cishet white men. And so I think we always have to question and challenge whatever, like everything in the field, right? Every single thing, from why is this Black person, this Black boy diagnosed this way? Is this enough? Like, are we sure? Can we look at other things going on? Doing things that challenge kind of how we show up in the work, right? So for example, I have a client I just worked with today that said that he was trying to get medication for ADHD, but disclosed to the psychiatrist that he smoked weed. So now the psychiatrist is like, oh, well, you need to do something to work on your addiction, right? So assuming that because he was a man in a Black body, that he was addicted to marijuana, that he needed to be sober, right? So now I'm taking it a step further and I'm calling this doctor. I'm going to tell her about herself and he's going to give that ADHD medication, right? Because as his therapist, this is part of my work, right? It's not just about in the office. It's about making sure that we do what we can to really, really serve the folks that we work with. And so we really have to take a look at different policies and different rules and regulations that are in place and just question them and say, are we doing this to cover our own asses? Are we doing this for the benefit of the people that we work with? Because a lot of things are there to cover our own asses, right? But I think some of that stuff gets in the way of the work, right? I think another example is self-disclosure, right? So one of my clients, trying to find a word other than clients, right? But one of the folks that I work with, I had just gotten a haircut, and they were just like, "Oh, you get a haircut? It looks nice." It's like, "Oh, thank you." I went over to, because he's in Philly too. I went over to wherever. He's like, "Oh, dope," right? By the book, that conversation should not happen. For Black folks, that's building rapport. That's earning trust, right? That's building a therapeutic relationship. And so again, it's really, really about questioning everything and saying, is this lens from a person of color or a marginalized individual's lens, or is it from a privileged white man's lens?
Mm-hmm.
I think part of, not gonna say too much, but part of my part of the way I decolonize things is just being relational, right? Being able to talk to them just like I'm talking to you all, being able to talk to family members the same way I'm able to bring clinical tools into things, because a lot of times with many white therapists, there's this power differential. Like, I'm the therapist, I know everything, you're right there. Whereas I'm walking with you on your path of wellness. I don't know more about you than you know about yourself. I'm just here to talk to you and try to talk to you week to week about what's going on, what could be in your treatment plan. I may throw in, oh, over there they have really good, fish and grits over here, or being able, like Marvin said, just to relate to them, because a lot of times, you know, therapy has looked at some type of Sigmund Freud thing where you have the ugly sweater and you're writing, you're not talking and being very stoic, and somebody has their feet up. Whereas I'm just talking to you like I talk to you right now, just very relatable, very down to earth, not using a lot of, too much clinical jargon, and being able to, break things down in a certain type of way. And then talk to you about some hip hop, talk to you about something that interests you. I think a lot of times too, if you're able to find a commonality with them of an interest or a hobby, that could be a way to, build rapport. And I think it's really important to build rapport, because overall, I've worked with predominantly Black and Brown communities. Um, so yeah, just being able to recognize that there's kind of really no power differential. Technically, they say that, but I'm just here just like you. And I tell them I go to therapy too. How about that?
For sure. Yo, everybody touched on very meaningful ways to bring in liberation and decolonization work in the therapeutic space. I think right now as a therapist, having one-on-one conversations with people, like, I think as a therapist, we have to understand like the socio-political conditions that we all try to navigate, because a lot of the folks that I meet with are being impacted by white supremacy and they don't necessarily even know it. They don't know how it's impacting them. Like, white supremacy is a sickness and an illness, and it manifests in us differently. So part of the work that I'm able to do is kind of explore how it impacts folks. Like, you know, a lot of times, I'm sure y'all probably experienced being in college, like you'll enmesh your self-value or self-worth to productivity and how much you're able to get done and meet your academic responsibilities. And so part of what I'm able to do is really like untie that and make people have this lens of, oh, wait, you know, what you do academically is only one aspect. It's not your whole humanity. In fact, I encourage folks to take time for pleasure and joy and being with community, doing things that they actually want to do, not that they're just graded on or going to be measured on. So part of that as a therapist is just understanding the conditions and then understanding how it's impacting the young people that you're working with. I love the idea, like the relational aspect of it all, because I think social work really tells you to have like, be a blank soundboard, right? And like, you can't really bring in yourself. It's like, where does that space actually exist where like, you can't bring in your identity or yourself? Like, it doesn't make it, I think it's an ill-advised way to go about doing therapy, because what people walk away with, whether they feel like they've received care, is really based on that therapeutic alliance, right? If they felt like they felt connected to their therapist. So I think that's really, I mean, that's just like some of the ways that we go about it.
Yeah. As y'all were speaking to, I was thinking about like some of the folks that inspire me, and you know, like, because I really took grad school as an opportunity to just read a lot of books. Like, I was like, you know, I'm probably never gonna be a student ever again in my life, and so let me just take this opportunity to consume as much literature as I can. And I feel like I learned more from like my personal reading list than I did from the assigned readings in class, you know what I mean? So I was like, you know, reading Frary or Fanon or James Baldwin or Bell Hooks, Assata Shakur, Toni Morrison. Like, these are the folks that have like shaped my clinical lens. And like, a lot of these folks aren't even like, you know, social workers or therapists, but in my mind, they're healers. They're folks that are committed to doing liberation work, doing community-based work, dismantling patriarchy, dismantling white supremacy. And that's like, I see my work as being part of that lineage. And so having something that feels like I'm grounded in is really helpful, because, you know, part of what you were also asking, Devin, is just like, how do you maintain moving into these spaces that are not built for you? And that's a struggle, y'all. And I think it just depends on like where you end up. Because like for myself, like I was just talking to one of my coworkers about this today, like being in a nonprofit, like that shit is part of the problem. Like the existence of the nonprofit industrial complex, just its intention is to maintain like subsistence existence. It's built to maintain poverty, and it's built to maintain like violence and suffering, because it's totally reliant on people suffering. And so that's like a constant like value conflict that I have when I show up to work. Like, I get to do really meaningful work, and I get to work like in my community, you know what I mean? Like, some of these kids are like, you know, cousins of folks I went to school with, or I'm getting to the age now where it's like some of my friends from high school, their kids are about to be in high school. And so that's really meaningful for me, because I don't think anyone could do it better than me. But at the same time, like, what am I contributing to? What am I a part of? And how much of my time is spent trying to shift and change that and dismantle that? And how productive is that for me, or for the work, or for the people I serve? And then how much of my time and energy is put towards building something entirely separate from that, like Melanated Social Work, because that actually feels much more fruitful, and it feels more liberatory than having to constantly butt against this white supremacist system and expecting it to be something different than what it was intended for.
I appreciate everything that everybody said. I think from the beginning, Jesse, you talking about the idea of you all finding each other and having this idea of community care to like survive in these spaces, and how that translates to you all developing this understand like, well, there's a reason why we're all feeling this way. We're not crazy. It's like a legitimate feeling behind that, and then start questioning those systems. And then that led to decolonization practices that you're now implementing for your clients, where you're disrupting. So now going to the idea of disruption, what are the radical ways that you disrupt in these spaces that as we said, were designed by cis white men?
Short and sweet. I think this wasn't overnight. It's taken time. But I think just being in certain spaces and being who you are and knowing who you are. That's it.
For sure. I think part of it has been being very intentional about holding a politicized practice. I think there is like an intention within the field to depoliticize the work that we do to make white people feel comfortable. And so I think like anything that we do, whether that's in our individual therapy work or when we are speaking and facilitating and offering trainings and things like that, we make it very clear like where our politics stand. I mean, we recently got into like a big situation when we were like presenting for a chapter of the NASW, because we spoke to the fact that we support the liberation of Palestinian people, which in my mind is not a contentious statement to make. That's in line with the work that we do, right? Like my work is to support people that are being oppressed. And folks had a real issue with that. But I think, it's just not making compromises, like Josh said, not quieting myself in those spaces. And I think particularly for us, all of us being cis men, while we do experience racism, like I think there is a lot of privilege of being a man in this work. Mm-hmm. And I know that like within the spaces that I move, I'm not liable to the same type of repercussions that could befall on like the other women of color in that space or the Black women that I work with. And so it's often my responsibility to speak up and speak to the ways in which I see different types of oppression showing up in the space. And that's been like telling off my supervisor at times and telling them that I think they're a white supremacist or I think they're racist. And being totally okay with the idea that like, if I say something, I could lose my job. But just know then if that's the case, that's probably not where I needed to be. That was not, that was not good for my own wellness. If that was the case, if I have to like silence myself or make myself small to fit into this hole, like that's not the business. But yeah, and I think like Michael was speaking to, like disrupting this power dynamic. But we are not the experts. We're not experts trying to impart knowledge. We're a part of the community. You know what I mean? And so just trying to change that dynamic of like, I'm trying to give all power to the people, all power to the young people and families I serve. And I'm just here to do what they need. You know what I mean? And that might not look what most people think is therapy. I'm out here right now because we're in a pandemic. I'm out here picking up, food from food banks and dropping them off to families that I know are food insecure, or I'm helping families, seek out legal aid so that they don't get evicted from their house right now because they lost their job because of COVID. You know what I mean? I'm just out here just trying to do whatever I can and help folks get their needs met.
Mm-hmm. I think about our role as therapists when we're in that space with people who are trying to figure out their own suffering and make sense of the world. Sometimes, and I'm speaking from my lens right now, like I hear harmful things, I hear harmful rhetoric, and that's always an opportunity to disrupt, which will create a little rupture, but you can repair it, right? So, I've worked with young men in college who have a whole lot of toxic masculinity. And hearing some of the communication they share about how they think their partner should show up or what's coming up for them, like I have ample opportunity to disrupt some stuff, to disrupt toxic thinking, and also to make sense of like how, like, why are you thinking that way in the first place? Like we can really unpack and explore where it's all coming from. But I think that the onus does lie on the therapist to show up authentically and be able to call things out as it happens in real time. Because if it doesn't happen in that space, person's going to go on thinking it's okay. So that's something I try to be mindful of on a small scale.
I think it's incredibly important that as social workers, we cannot be afraid to ruffle some feathers. At the same time, I know a lot of y'all are just going into the job market, just getting jobs. And so like, get your job, right? Like get your money, pay your loans, whatever you need to do. But at the same time, you all should be scoping out and taking mental notes of what this organization looks like, looking at the dynamics, looking at the things that are problematic, and be having some plans of like how we're going to address this. Right. And so like, I don't think any of us are saying come in guns blazing and just like being like, you're a racist, Paula. But I think that, you know, we definitely can start. So what I do is I ask questions, and I'm just like, I have a face. This is my thinking face, but also like my what the fuck is this bullshit face? That's that face. So I have a face and I'm just like, okay, so we're not allowed. Y'all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're not allowed to take a client in your car, but they don't have money to get to this place and they need to go to this place to like live. Okay. And so kind of asking more questions like, well, can we do this? Well, why can't we do this? Well, isn't this against our mission though? Then you bring it to like what they have in their mission statement or whatever bullshit, you know, statements that they have to say that Black Lives Matter or they care about people or whatever the fuck else. But you use their language and make sure that they are being held accountable. I think that you have to be willing to speak up and speak out on behalf of groups that we're supposed to be serving, right? Because we know what help looks like. And sometimes these organizations don't actually care what help looks like. They care about the numbers, right? They care about making sure that things are billable, right? And so we really have to not be afraid to ruffle some feathers, ask those difficult questions, talk to leadership, and like really, you know, ask why things are the way that they are and be willing and ready to challenge them. You know, I also think that, you know, as myself as a therapist, I, with my clients, I let them know I am going to challenge you. I'm going to bring up issues of race, racism, and white supremacy. That is part of my consultation call. I'm letting you know who I am and what to expect. And so I don't know if private practices or other practices do that, but I think we need to do that. And we need to be ready to answer questions from clients like, who did you vote for in the 2020 election? Because as a Black man, I will never refer any of the folks that I work with to you if you're saying you voted for 45, right? So I really think we have to, even when our organizations say we're not supposed to do things, no one knows what you do in your sessions. When you're communicating with the folks that you work with and helping them navigate different systems, they can't see you. Say whatever you want. If you say whatever you want, if you know it's for the benefit of the person you're working with. Because white supremacy tells us that it restricts us, right? It doesn't allow us to be our full authentic selves as helpers. And it sometimes doesn't ask the folks that we work with to be their full authentic selves either. And so we have to say, fuck that. Because we know what's best a lot of the times. But also, like Josh was saying, we got to know who we are too.
And I love that. Oh, go ahead, Jesse.
I was just thinking about thinking about the earlier question and how much us like finding community with each other was part of like our process. And I think that is also like disruptive in whatever space you move in. Because similarly, like I have my group of folks at work that like, these are my people. I know we share value together, like we share a mission together, and that shit keeps me solid so that like when the shit's going down in the meeting, all I have to do is like look at someone and like help me get through that shit. And I think wherever it is that you find community, whether that's at work or finding community with the people that you are serving, like that's part of it. And know that there's work that happens outside of that too. Like I think it is just so important for folks that like are in this field that want to be social workers to get involved in their community. Like the impact that you have does not start and end with your job. Like folks should join community-based organizations to support the work that's happening locally, like get tapped in, whether that's like helping to support set up free fridges so that folks have access to food, or a lot of cities like Oakland, we're setting up the macro program now, similar to the Kahoot program in Seattle, but they're looking for mental health providers to come and respond to calls so that we can divert those calls away from police. You know what I mean? And like here in Oakland, we have like the Anti-Police Terror Project, where volunteer clinicians and therapists volunteer their time to take those calls. So it's like, thinking about like, what is your skill set? Because I know like a lot of folks want to like just show up to the protest or whatever and do something like that. But think about like what it is that you're good at. Like we're all trained in a space to offer therapy. So it's like, how can we use that gift towards liberation? And so just thinking about how can we get plugged into the community outside of like what is work? Because oftentimes it's a shit that's much more meaningful.
Just want to, go ahead, Josh.
I was gonna say that Kim Young actually says, who's the dope black _ social worker. She says, social worker is a noun. They are an expert troublemaker above anything else. Example, that social worker is not just a therapist, they are an expert troublemaker. And that's what we do. And I believe if you're gonna be a real social worker, you gotta ruffle feathers, you gotta change systems. But we, to be honest, being like 6 years into the field, there's like basically a tale of two social workers, right? You got social workers that are just gonna go fly in and go get that. If you want to go the licensure route, go get their independent licensure, go be full, go get those fancy credentials, right? And kind of leave off the systems change talk, right? And then you have social workers like us who I'm not fully licensed yet, I'm going to be, but you can get fully licensed, but you can also change those systems and remember who you are at the end of the day. Just remember that, because y'all like nice, new, the knowledge is fresh, you're feeling not so beat down by these systems. Keep that same passion in mind, right? I think the biggest difference between the average that I've seen black or brown social worker compared to the white social worker is like, so the white people that are here, for the most part, y'all students or whatever, okay, that's one thing. But like a lot of our white colleagues in the field, after 5 and before 9, they're not really doing this. The average black and brown social worker is being in community, right? Putting in the extra hours. So it takes 10,000 hours, Malcolm Gladwell. We probably reach a certain level of craftsmanship or certain, I don't want to say perfection, there's no such thing, but of proficiency that we see, right? There's a lot of white clinicians that may have those fancy credentials and this and that, and we can teach them just coming out the gate, with a lot of things. So there's two different things, and I encourage the white social workers that are here, that are going to be here in the long run, to do something afterward, build community with those to tear down these systems, because a lot of white social workers in these systems, they enable the systems and they don't really do anything. And a lot of black and brown social workers, going on a tangent right now, when it comes to private practice, it's just something you white social workers, they just go to. When it comes to black and brown social workers, we're trying to run out of the fucking burning house of these systems and build our own places and spaces. A lot of times we come to these conclusions just out of being burned out, being tired, having moral injury. This is not an easy thing just to get to these certain plights and these certain platforms, right? So just think about those things. And to those that are here that are Black and brown, keep doing your thing. Keep building community. Keep your family first. And also don't, like, I know y'all gonna be doing social work after 5. Sometimes don't do social work after 5. Take your mental health days. Go to therapy. Like, do what you do, because the work is gonna be here for you. And the work needs you, but you need yourself first. So that's my piece on that.
No, I appreciate that. So much gems in that, so much knowledge. Like, the idea of like who is supposed to be a social worker, the fact that you are showing up as your authentic self is speaking truth to power. And once you know you're able to speak the truth to power even better. And in those circumstances, it comes out in different ways, whether that be challenge your clients to help them unlearn the isms that have been installed in all of us, whether that be challenging organizations, but like going even beyond that, like the idea of, good trouble, shout out to John Lewis, that our ancestor there passed away, you know, and moving in beyond that, like the idea that the revolution will not have a 501(c)(3) status. Like, like, let's be honest now, like, the work is beyond what we do in the profession, beyond professionalization. For time's sake, I want to transition to the next part. I know you all went to Boston College for your social work degree, similar to NYU, it's a PWI. So I want to bring you into context of what it's like at a PWI here and what's going on currently at NYU in this university setting. So currently at NYU, specifically at Silver, we have had, racial incidents on campus, where that be like overt white supremacy or covert everyday microaggressions have happened on campus. There has been diversity and equity inclusion work that has been brought to Silver. Reports have been done to, look at the situation here, done by Kenneth Hardy. And then currently in this current moment, if we're looking at the wider university of what's going on, currently, graduate students are at strike, fighting for a livable wage. And we think about like exploitation of labor and so much emotional labor that students do, and other, faculty here at the university do in these white spaces, particularly students of color, international students, and things like that. This is, the nature of like white supremacy, like schools and PWIs, they ingrained this. So I want to talk about like, reflecting on your own experience of, grad school, and what was that like being at a PWI, and like, how did you get through it?
You looking at it. you looking at the squad, you looking at the homies. So I've shared this before, the 3 no, when we walked into the conference room, day 1, orientation, 200 plus people, and I found a handful of POC, the Black folks, I'm still connected to like, I thought like, I had a space at the time in Boston where I would have folks come over and just kind of hang out and outside of the world of academia. But it was really all about just being in community with people to support each other, because we weren't getting it in the classroom, we weren't getting it in the field, but we had it with each other. And it happened really organically. Like, it wasn't like anything like structured about it. It was, we saw each other, we talked shop, and realized we had a lot of overlapping similarities, experiences, interests. Like, it really happened organically. So how we, at least, and I'm speaking for myself right now, like, and I think my brothers would concur that surviving a PWI was all about finding your people. Yeah, I don't know if any of y'all want to add on to that.
Yeah, and I mean, like, for me, it was not taking that shit too serious. Like, I knew I was gonna graduate, and so I wasn't gonna sweat everything. You know what I mean? Like, I also, like, I shouted out Betty Blythe in the chat earlier. Betty's one of our professors from BC, and she was one of, yeah, she's a real white accomplice. She's down with the struggle. She'll be there with me throwing the Molotov cocktail. So, you know what I mean? Like, so having folks that, like, professors like that I knew would hold space, that would challenge white people, that would not look to us as folks to tap into to offer education for the classroom, but just there to try and support us, center our experiences. Being able to stay connected to some folks like that on campus really helped get through. And yeah, like Michael said, like just being in community with folks. A lot of us came together through the Graduate Students of Color Association. So that was across the entire school, not just the School of Social Work, but this was an association for all the different grad schools. And so, you know, because we were struggling in social work, but you meet folks in like the School of Business and they're like the only Black person in there, or you know, different other, the School of Psychology or whatever. So yeah, just being able to like hold community with folks there. And similarly, like I was speaking to, like just getting involved in community. You know, I'm born and raised in the Bay Area. Moving to Boston, particularly I lived in Cambridge actually, was the first time I ever moved out of the Bay Area. And I wanted to be really intentional that like I am coming to this space where a lot of people consume and they leave. You know, Boston has more colleges and universities like per square mile than almost any other city in the world. And a lot of these folks come to Boston, disrupt the space. The rent's high as fuck. It's like as much as to live in Manhattan as it is to live in Boston. It's a boring ass city. It makes zero sense. And you know, it's entirely disrupted Black and brown community there. So I knew if I'm gonna come here, I'm gonna try to do something positive while I'm here as well. And so I tried to get involved in community organizing in Cambridge, in the larger Boston area. And that was the shit that gave me life. That was the shit that kept me moving. It wasn't necessarily like, you know, going to class and the lectures were just enthralling. Like it was being in the streets with the people, you know what I mean? And it made me feel like my time in Boston was for something, that I actually got to connect with other folks that weren't social workers, but people that are perceived to be radical change makers. And, you know, I've learned so much just from being in that type of organizing space in terms of what does it mean to be a healer than I have in like any of the other work that I've done.
Mm.
I would say what I'll tell you all is what got me through is like taking trips out of town, like coming back to New York. I actually went to, you know, I told myself before I turned 30, I wanted to go to the motherland of all motherlands, Africa. So I went to South Africa. I went to Afropunk in grad school. I just traveled a lot. I went to see family in Texas. Um, that was one thing. I would say another thing is the Graduate Students of Color organization that really helped us to build community. Um, and if I could do it again, my biggest thing I would tell you all is if you can, with your student health insurance that you have, even if you can afford like maybe once a month or so, or what have you, move some stuff around. I would encourage you, if, and I know it's hard to find the right healer or therapist, but I would go into therapy or healing to have that space to talk about all the fuck shit and microaggressions. Because, you know, my mental health was really, it was really tough. I was depressed a lot. Had a lot of anxiety. Boston is a physically cold place, and the people here are emotionally cold as well. I call it like a Boston vortex or vortex. And the biggest thing that I can tell you is from Masada Shakur, no one is going to give you the education you need to overthrow them. Nobody is going to teach you your true history, teach you your true heroes if they know that that knowledge will help set them free. So you can't put it, I don't know you're not, but to the Black and brown folks in the room, they're not going to give you the tools to overthrow them or do any of these things. And they're not going to teach you how to do grant writing. Well, maybe they can, I don't know. For the most part, grant writing, how to start your own business, your own LLC, all those things. You know, like Marvin said, do what you got to do, get your your credentials, have your people, get, you know, get your hours. If you want to do that, get the fuck out of there, get your own business.
Yeah, y'all highlighting so many important things. Reinforcing the idea of community keeps coming up over and over again. You know, I think one of the most challenging things though about like school, especially during this time, is the fact that we're all virtual, and that community might have been harder to build and harder to find, especially, you know, when we're entering classes and, you know, screens are off. We don't know who's in here sometimes. It's harder to connect in this way. And as social workers of color in particular, we're probably going to enter agencies that are predominantly white, and it might be even harder to find community there. So, what do you recommend for social workers who want to find community after school, who didn't get to build that while in school?
Real quick, I'll say just like as far as in school, virtually speaking, look to your left, look to your right. The people who you talk to and be like, yo, did this motherfucker just say that shit? The people who you always have those conversations with and just build with, like, okay, you can do this, you can do that. People who you're always talking to offline that you do because you want to, those are the ones you want to stay in touch with. Because not everybody that we may have to, you're gonna have to work with people that you don't like and they may have different politics. That's just a part of life. But the people who y'all connect with outside of social work and be like, did you see that shit? Those are the ones you want to connect with. So that's my thing on that.
I would, add that, to Josh's point, yeah, the folks that are around you are going to be your colleagues right after a while. So even some of the folks still that I went to grad school with, I'm talking to these guys about like, hey, I have this client that's showing these symptoms. Like, what do you suggest, right? And they'll give you, the information that you need, not just that book answer, right? I think still it's about finding community in any way that you can. So a lot of places, a lot of sites, so like Facebook has a clinicians of color group. And I know a lot of people have been connecting on that, using different platforms like Clubhouse, right? Clubhouse, people have made some really, really strong connections on Clubhouse as well. Using Instagram, following folks that you really vibe with, like Melanated Social Work, and following, just following different people, because a lot of folks have events, right? So like Melanated Social Work has events. I know Rachel Cargill has events, and she's not a social worker, but still she has events. Kim Young, the dope black social worker, has events as well. So like, get in those events, connect with other people, because I think one of the terrible things about COVID is that, one good thing out of all of the terrible things from COVID is that we don't have to be physically in the same space to build community. Right. And I think that is what we're seeing a lot of. And I think that we should start taking advantage of that as helpers and healers when we can.
Yeah, thank you all. Jesse, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I know Josh has really pushed also different networks that folks can join. And so like really push for Black social workers to join the NABSW. And we've been in community and conversation with the folks that run the NABSW, and they're lit as fuck. So, I think joining different networks, especially if you are very isolated, can be helpful. Attending different conferences that are guided towards like liberation, or folks that are doing liberatory work. And similar to like what Marvin said, like just really connecting with folks through social media, like it is like, it is a tool for organizing and connecting people, and it can be utilized in a way as that, to find some sense of connection. I really hope that like folks take the time to find somewhere that they can thrive though. You know what I mean? And I know the reality is sometimes folks have to just take a job, and just be in that space, even if it feels like there isn't a sense of community there, or it feels like it is not fostering their growth. But don't feel like you have to stay in that situation. Like find something else, continue to move. I think particularly for the folks of color, like we bring so much knowledge and expertise in this work. And I think it's something that we've talked about within Melanated Social Work, is us letting go of this imposter syndrome and stopping like doubting ourselves. Like research has shown that a white person that is highly underqualified for a job will apply without hesitation to a job that a person of color is overqualified for, and we might second guess ourselves. And so I think part of that process is us acknowledging like our greatness, and we don't need these fuck shit ass organizations. Like they need us. And that's the type of relationship that we need to hold. And so that's also something we coach and mentor young social workers on, is like, get your paper. You know what I mean? Don't just come and accept the first offer. Like we deserve more because we run shit. We run the DEI. We run all the shit. So it's like, give us our paper. And so always negotiate your salary. And I tell folks in grad school too, negotiate a scholarship. Like shout out to the assistant dean. He's now retired, but the assistant dean at Boston College, like I told him like, yo fam, like I don't get enough money from y'all. Like I'm in these classes and I'm offering education to folks. Like I'm literally an unpaid professor. So please give me more money. And he did. And so like, I didn't know that you could do shit like that, but white people do it all the time. So it's like, ask for your money because you deserve it.
Yeah. I want to talk about this idea of like imposter syndrome and a reframing that I personally do. I stopped using the word imposter syndrome because these systems are designed by white cis men, as we know. It's meant to be, housed by white cis men. So the feelings, the physical manifestation, those feelings that we're feeling, that is the system trying to maintain its status quo, and that's what's showing up in us. I say that I'm an infiltrator in the system, and that's how I identify. Because I'm not here to maintain no status quo. I'm here to turn things up. So that's my reframing. That's what I use. So like I keep hearing this idea of finding community through different ways, especially like this online world now that people are now pushing for us to navigate and network in so many different platforms and tap into communities, even when you are isolated. And Josh, I want to give you a shout out for naming all the different like self-care practices that you mentioned that you did just today to come into this space. Because this work that we do is emotional labor, it's physical labor as well. And we think about social work students. We're only here for 2 years, right? How much organizing can we do? How much times can we speak up during this short period of time, while at the same time making sure we take care of ourselves and our communities? So can you speak to like how can social work students continue to disrupt in higher education spaces while make sure they take care of themselves?
Use your days. There are so many social workers that have all of these vacation days, all of these sick days just sitting there. And they feel like that if they take a day off or 2 days off, that everything's gonna go to shit. And like clients are gonna like wow out. Like, and granted, they might, but they probably won't. They probably won't. Everything is going to be just fine. So I encourage folks to take your days off. Josh spoke to self-care earlier. And so I echo all of these things. Get a therapist. Make sure that you have someone that you can really talk to and talk that real shit about. Don't just settle for somebody that's there and that just accepts your insurance. Really get someone that is really going to understand you and help you the way that you need to be helped. We're going to say community again. Lean into your community. Part of what I'm doing literally right now, I'm staying with Jesse and Jesse's partner right now because this is my community and this gives me positive energy. Being back home, being in Oakland, California. I feel like my face is doing all kind of light and dark things. I was glowing before and now it's like awkward. Yeah, but being like, leaning into your community, figuring out like what you want to do that is not related to social work or activism or any of that shit. Find some time to rest. I often tell people to find and intentionally find time to do nothing, right? Like intentionally, because I think internalized capitalism makes us feel like we always have to be moving and on the go, even on our days off. We're supposed to be learning something or doing something or being productive. No, you don't. Rest your body, rest your mind. One of my favorite quotes that I created: cancel it and rest. Cancel it and rest. Next week, I canceled all of my clients. every single one. And I said, you know what? Because I need to fucking rest. I haven't had a vacation in a year and a half. I don't know. And so it's so important that we take care of ourselves. It's so important that we reframe this idea that self-care is selfish. Nah, self-care is prioritizing yourself. It's making sure that you have something to give so you don't burn out. It's you're recharging that battery. Because when you're down to, like your phone, if you are down to 1% is in the red, what do? Put that charger in. So for us, we know when we're at 1%. We feel that shit in our bodies. And so your body is literally telling you to rest, or else you will have no choice. Your body will do it for you. Mm-hmm. So make sure that you're always taking care of yourself.
Mm-hmm. I think that's super important. And especially if you're trying to combat systems of power and trying to disrupt them, you got to be well. But the key, I think, what y'all have heard today is we've emphasized community. Collective power is going to be key if you want to change anything. You got to have buy-in from the masses. So I don't know what specifically what y'all needs are or how y'all want to plan to disrupt power, but you got to try to get buy-in from more than less. And of course, hitting institutions in their pockets. You hit somebody, whether financially, yada, yada, they're going to pay attention. Again, I don't know what it is specifically what y'all want to do to disrupt some things, but if you got numbers and you hit in the pockets, like they're going to the school's going to pay attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a hard question to answer, just in terms of like the realities of campus organizing. Cause like Michael was saying, like, yeah, like stop paying tuition, just don't do it. But like, I don't know if anyone's trying to do that, you know what I mean? And so it's really like, what feels okay for you? Like acknowledging that, like, when you leave this space, feeling like you had some sort of an impact, but you also didn't burn yourself out. And I think that's a different dynamic for every single person. I'll give you the example of myself and my partner. We both went to grad school at the same time, and I went to Boston College, and she got her degree from Brandeis University, which is just a few miles away. While she was in school, she helped to lead 10-day sit-in, and I participated in that, and about 50 students took over the entire administrative building. We locked it down. None of the school administrators, the deans, no one was allowed in their office for 10 days. And we held that shit down. It was a dope fucking action. It resulted in an agreement that the university would hire more Black professors, that they would hire more Black counselors to work in the wellness center, that they would increase the matriculation of Black students. And it was a huge victory, and it was highly traumatic for everyone. The fallout of that was that some of the students that participated dropped out. Some students had to take a year away from school, and it was important at the time, and it felt really important. And I think the most important part of it was the community that we formed. And there were parts of that action that influenced me until this day, in terms of like how I want to show up in the world. What does it mean to live cooperatively with people? What does it mean to live in a space without hierarchy, that we collectively make decisions, that we collectively hold power? And at the same time, it came at a huge cost for some people's wellness. And so rethinking it, I would have approached that differently, and realizing that that's not the move for everyone. Like, that everyone shouldn't feel like they have to put everything on the line, their own wellness, their existence, finishing school, just to create some type of system change for a space that is no longer a part of my life. Like, I could put all this energy into changing Boston College or whatever, and at a certain point, I'm either gonna leave or graduate, and that fucking university actually makes zero fucking impact in my life and in my community. And so yeah, and so that's the dichotomy and the conflict that you're faced with. And I think everyone just has to decide for themselves what feels okay, that you walk away from a situation feeling like you did enough or you didn't do too much. And I think particularly for folks of color, just focusing on moments of experiencing joy in that space, that you're not allowing this white supremacist institution to fucking crush you, is revolutionary. I highly suggest everyone read Pleasure Activism by Adrienne Marie Brown, and reframing like, what does it mean for us to heal, and what does it mean for us to engage in activism? Like, it doesn't have to always be the struggle, and that we have to find moments of joy, because that is engaging in activism.
I just want to add really quickly that to remember that it's a marathon, right? Like, if you can try to be fresh out of grad school and do all the things and say that you're going to change everything, but that is not realistic. White supremacy has been here for centuries, millennia, I don't know. But you, in a year, 2 years, probably not even our lifetime, right, are going to make the impact that we truly want to make, right? And so, just because that also can burn you out, is thinking that you have to do all the things all the time. And so also, that's why it's so important to rest. Our ancestors, right, didn't have the luxury of rest. And so we need to definitely rest, because I say my ancestors smile when I rest, because they know that I'm getting right back at that shit when I'm rested.
Yeah, it's so true. Like, freedom is a constant struggle. But in that struggle, we need to find time for joy and love and life and community. And those are things that keep the struggle going on and keep it moving. And for time's sake, and I want to move on to Q&A and bring in, people's questions that they had. So one of the first questions, I want to get into right now is, if we do decide to work in an oppressive system, but with a liberatory abolitionist practice, what do you suggest we look for to make sure that we can make change from within?
I mean, you got to have people power. So you're not going to come into a situation and change shit on your own. You got to be connected to folks. And so, like, one of the things that I did at my organization is starting like different employee support groups. I mean, we just get together and talk shit about white people, but like having that sense of community, there's power in those numbers. Like, you're not going to come in and just change shit off the bat. And you have to understand the dynamics of the space. Like someone said earlier, like, money talks, you know what I mean? So you have to understand, like, where does the money come from in this organization? Who are they beholden to? Because they're not necessarily beholden to us. They're not necessarily beholden to the community. If they're about their values, they're living their values, then they are. But at the end of the day, they're beholden to the funders. And so what's the shit that potentially makes them look bad to the funders? And how can we leverage that to get them to do what it is that we want? I think particularly in this time, we're living in a very interesting time, because now, post the murder of George Floyd, all these organizations wanted to make a statement that they stand for the Black Lives Matter movement. That's leverage. That is documented evidence that people have said that they are committed to the Black Lives Matter movement. And we can use that as leverage to see whether or not, what are the actions they are taking. And was that just, performative activism, or are folks actually doing things? And I think folks should take the time during the interview process to find out, like, where folks are at, like asking folks, like, what is the organization stance? Do y'all consider yourselves abolitionists? What is your perspective on the police? What is your perspective on Palestine? Like, just know up front, because it's much better to just know up front what you're getting into rather than find out as you kind of like transition into a workspace.
Mm-hmm. And I'll add on the, ask how they supported their employees during the pandemic. Were they taking into consideration the health concerns, or were they making folks still go out in the field and without like mask or hand sanitizer, like whatever it is, however, just ask about the treatment of their people. And adding on to the idea of organizing, something we learned from Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown, is understanding the power dynamics and the hierarchical structure of the organizations that you'll likely go into, and knowing that the people who really possess the most power are the people on the ground, doing the groundwork, meeting with folks in person. It's not necessarily the supervisor, the manager, the boss, the person in that position of power, because if they're not showing up to work, the work is still getting done because the people on the ground are doing it. So just understand your collective power when you enter the field. Brush shoulders with people who are doing that, develop those relationships, because if y'all ever want to make meaningful change, you're going to have the numbers to do it. So just hold it in mind.
I would add, so thinking about with even the folks that we work with, what's the first thing we do? We typically are assessing, right? So in that same way, I'm assessing the job. I'm seeing who has power. What little cliques are there? I make an intentional choice when I start a job to have lunch, if the team is small enough, to have individual lunch or some type of session with each person, just to see who's going to be my accomplice and who I'm going to have to watch out for. I think learning who can influence the person with power as well, right? Because if my director is close to the office manager, and I'm now close to the office manager, I got inside information and I got influence too, right? And so really looking and dissecting and analyzing those dynamics, and utilizing those to make shit better.
I'm wondering, Marvin, if you could speak to, because I know you have a very unique experience in where you are job-wise, being at the Radical Therapy Center, and being in such a politicized therapeutic space. Like, how did you do that? Like, how did you end up in a situation where you are aligned values-wise with the people that are directly supervising you? Because what we're really speaking to is the antithesis of that, and ending up in a space that is rooted in white supremacy. Like, how do we just do that, do what you did, and skip all the bullshit?
I got incredibly lucky. One of my friends told Khalida, who is owner of the Radical Therapy Center, that I know this Black man, he's dope, meet him. And I said, okay. I actually didn't do any research on Radical Therapy Center at all either. I was just like, anything to get me out of my shit job, I'm gonna try it. So met with Khalida, we had a lot of the same values, started working there part-time. And she was just like, do you wanna see clients here? And I was just like, yes. She also supervised me, and and now we're colleagues at this group practice. And so I think one of the things that I really recognized was how my body felt when I was in that space. Because when I was with the school district, it was chaos, pure chaos. I was anxious, I was frustrated, I was upset. I was just like, these motherfuckers don't respect me at all. And then, I did my part-time work after, going there, and it's just like zen. And Skylar's like, do you want some tea? And Sonali is like a whole ass celebrity walking around giving hugs. And I'm just like, what the fuck is this utopia? What is this? And just like, they had such a beautiful vision, and then stepped out on faith and was like, you know what, this feels right. Something that Khalida said was, we move at the speed of trust as far as like hiring me. And I was just like, oh shit. Like, that was like you never hear that from one of these like white-led organizations, is that it's you need resumes, or you need numbers, or you need these things. It's just like, nah, it just felt right. right? And so I think, you know, again, with trusting your body, trust what your body says to you in these different spaces. Because again, your body always knows.
That's beautiful. And you're literally illuminating as you say those beautiful words, my guy. So thank you.
Yeah, and you know, Marvin's experience with the Radical Therapy Center is evidence that these things exist and that we could create more of them, that this is just not one thing, it's just not an aberration, that this could be a possibility widespread. And I think there's beauty in something, you know, seeing it happen and trying to like model it and make it our own based on like what our community needs. And you know, if we're not in organizations like that, you know, like everybody is saying, assess it, get to know who your accomplices are, and unionize. Social workers need to talk about that. Let's be real now, because if we're improving the material conditions of our practice, we're therefore improving the conditions for our clients. Because nobody wants a burnt out social worker serving them. You know, nobody wants an underpaid, exhausted person working for them, doing a half-ass job. Let's be real about that. You know, we improve our conditions, we improve the conditions for our clients, you know, and that's also, you know, where our work is driven, our advocacy
Fill
is.
you up with a bunch of things that make you feel real inside. That can be a way that you can say to them that this is going to be all right.
Stacy, did you mean to unmute? Because, you know, you're welcome to join the space too if you have a question to ask as well.
No, it was by accident. Sorry.
No worries, no worries. You know, being, you know, mindful of time. How y'all feel about answering one more question? That's cool.
I'm with it.
Yeah.
All right. So the second question we have is, oh, I love this one. One of the many tenets of white supremacy is worship of the written word in academia. How do you all create a space for personal storytelling and experiences in your practice, especially in team settings or nonprofits?
Will you drop the question in the chat?
All right, got that as well.
Thank you.
I have a question.
What's up, Bridget?
Go for it.
All right, so this is what I feel like I'm like regressing in a lot of ways, right? So I'll be 32 in September, and like I'm Black American woman, and like I've been working in the field, the nonprofit sector, specifically in Austin, Texas, and now I'm in my graduate school program at the University of Texas, Austin, and so maybe I shouldn't say too much, but I guess what I have noticed, in even like prior to being like in the formal setting that is the university, even in the nonprofit sector, like when and before it was popular to like organizing to undo racism, like we all don't have like a shared language or analysis or a structural analysis around any of this. So I just feel like I feel like that's I mean, there's a lot of problems with the field of social work, right? But I feel like that is one of the biggest problems, because we all have varying definitions and we're entering into this work at different stages, which I don't think that's a bad thing, but we just like it. I don't think it helps. Like it disorganizes us to not have, like, to not be on the same page. And so I find myself really frustrated and always starting there, whether that be in a nonprofit and trying to like organize around undoing racism, or even now like in a university setting and trying to do that. And it's definitely perceived as radical. Like, and so I don't know if y'all have had thoughts about that, or if that's something that y'all are always revisiting. But yeah.
I do. I have lots of thoughts about that. Like, it baffles me that folks have like literally like laughed in my face or snickered at me as I've said like abolish the police for like the last 10 years. And now people are kind of like starting to understand. And I think it was that piece around like the shared language that you're speaking towards. But yeah, I think that is a part of the process. I think in the ways that like folks have to learn in community with each other. I think organizing and building together is a learning process. And I think there is some acceptance that we have to have, that like we're all at different stages on our path towards liberation. And I've seen difficulty in accepting that kind of stop organizing from happening, because we operate in this way of being like, yo, if this person doesn't know all the lingo and all the terminology and shit like that, but it's like acknowledging that there's certain power and privilege towards like even accessing those things. To me, having space and time to engage in reading a fucking book, or, you know, learning about whatever. And that is a true difficulty with organizing, is that folks are not on the same page. But I think when you can be in deep beloved community with folks, I think that's actually a strength. I think the power of the process of coming together and building shared language, and not in the way that like any one person holds the knowledge and we're like replicating these banking systems that like Paulo Freire talks to, where folks are empty receptacles that need to be like poured into. But the reality that we all share a wealth of knowledge based on our own lived experience, and we bring that into the organizing space. But I think systems of oppression and institutions that oppress will play on the fact that we are not all at the same point, and try to radicalize us as a way to delegitimize our goal, our intention, our movement. And so the institution is doing exactly what it was intended to. And so when I came into the space that I'm working in now, people were not with me. They were not tracking with me when I said defund the police, or in some spaces I just say fuck the police. But now they're finally there. And it's shitty that like it took folks a long time to get there, but I'm just glad that people are there and engaging in the dialogue now. But just because the fact that folks weren't with me at the time didn't stop my momentum with it. I knew that I stood for something rooted in my values, that I honestly believe we will see a world without police and prisons. It may not be in my lifetime, but that will happen, and I will create a better future for generations to come. And so just because folks aren't on the same page doesn't mean that the work stops. Maybe it's just different work. And it goes at a different pace. It goes at the speed of trust, as Marvin said.
The speed of trust, the speed of truth, right? Thinking about this idea how lies, we live in the era of fake news. That spreads so fast. And we want to go far. We want to go to that world that we imagine. I think talking about language, getting people on the same page is something we're always going to have to revisit. I mean, Jesse shared it beautifully, but there's always going to be movement haters. There's going to be people who don't understand, who don't want to lean into transformation and change. And I'll speak from my lens right now. Sometimes I don't have compassion for those people. I'm really dismissive if they're not with it. And then other times I have days where I am a little bit more compassionate, and I can convey a little bit more empathy and try to help folks share a perspective rooted in truth. But there are a lot of false narratives out there. So like Jesse said, who knows if we'll see it in this lifetime, but we have to still continue to engage in that work, throughout all the resistance.
Yeah, this is I think, we have to remember, this is a messy process, right? Like it's messy. It's never been done before. There's no template.
Yeah.
Right? The only template that we have is what we have now. And we know that shit don't work.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so I think, although sometimes that can be frustrating and chaotic sometimes, it's also beautiful because we can create, right? We can start to build a lot of these things. We can be the trailblazers. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's also kind of important to keep in mind too.
Yeah. One of the things that's guided me so much is the work of Adrienne Marie Brown. And so like I've read and reread Emergent Strategy, and it is continually reminding me about how to be in relationship with other people. And while like we may not shift the institutions in that moment through the work and the labor and the organizing we're doing, we can build some really dope shit interpersonally with each other. And that is catalyst for real healing to happen. That's catalyst for real change to happen. So if folks haven't yet read Emergent Strategy, put it at the top of your reading list. It's really just about how do we get back to being in harmony with the natural world and moving in that way with each other. Yeah.
We want to do the last one.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's close on the last question. About, how do you all create space for personal storytelling experiences in your practice?
Is that question for whoever asked it? Is that for when we work with our folks we work with, or like our colleagues? Okay. So for me, so again, this idea of self-disclosure, that is typically, we're taught to not ever disclose anything ever. You are just therapist, there is wall. And so for me, fuck that, right? So I, again, identify as a queer Black man. And so it is, I think, comforting for other queer men, Black men and men of color to know that I get it, right? What the coming out process looks like, or the allowing folks in process looks like. We're gonna change that term too. And it's comforting for them to say, like, to see that I have been through that exact same experience, even though the outcome may be different. I understand the anxiety, I understand the pressure, I understand how toxic masculinity, and internalized homophobia is inside of us. And it directly is bumping up against who we are as people, right? What we're taught versus who I am, right? And that is helpful, right? The fact that, I have some folks that I work with that are dealing with relationship issues. And again, the bisexuality is a privilege because I can speak to me and my ex-girlfriend, and also I can speak to me and my situationships. So, and so like, that is something that is helpful, right? Like, we can bring ourselves into the space, but I'm never centering my experience. It's never about me. It's about relating to like the experience and what could be going on for that person that you're working with. So again, the books say that we should not do that. For a lot of folks of color, that is the way in which we really build trust, because we don't trust folks like that, especially with our personal business. Hell no. You have to earn this trust. You have to prove that I can trust you. Right. And so a lot of people and folks of color are not going to just like be vulnerable with any stranger. You're a fucking stranger. They need to know who you are. When it comes to the storytelling with colleagues or with supervisors, I just, as again, queer bisexual Black man, there's a lot of oppression that I have seen, a lot of microaggressions that I have seen. And so again, if we're using their language of wanting to be anti-racist or saying that Black lives matter, then I need to see it, because I will tell them about my experiences and how the organization did nothing. Or if the organization is doing things that is directly against the language that they're saying, I'm going to say, well, I personally feel oppressed by this. Like, what are y'all going to do? Because that was my experience. So if I'm experiencing this and I have a voice, imagine what other folks are experiencing that may not have the privilege that I have.
Yeah. I think for me, as a practice, in terms of like, if we get into like modalities and shit, I am a narrative practitioner. So the work that I do is surrounding storytelling, and helping folks tell their story. And that I differentiate that from narrative therapy, because being a narrative practitioner, it's more of a view of the world than it is like specific interventions that I use. I believe that we all hold stories. And thinking about the work that we do, like the oldest way of transmitting knowledge was through oral storytelling. And so I am a continuation of that lineage. So before our ancestors had the ability to write things down, to keep them and communicate them to other people, we told stories. And I'm just trying to uphold that tradition. And so I do very much hold a lot of value to the stories that I've been given, to the stories that I get to tell about myself and my family, about my community. And that holds in my mind so much more weight than, as the question speaks to, like the written word or academia. While I may tap in and utilize some of these tools to support people in navigating their own white supremacist systems, whether that be my colleagues or the people I serve, having a firm understanding of how white supremacy operates can be a useful tool in supporting people in minimizing their suffering. Not to say that they should conform to these oppressive systems, but knowing their oppressor well can help people live and experience more joy. And so I'm often sharing the stories that have been given to me by the people I serve, and using them as tools to hopefully support other people in telling their stories, or support other clinicians in supporting other people telling their stories. But I mean, we're all storytellers, whether we realize it or not. Even when we show up without even saying anything, we are telling a story by how we exist in this space. So yeah, so that's kind of how I see storytelling coming up in my work.
Mm-hmm.
In regards to the kind of like a little bit to what's already been said, as far as like, even for me as a clinician working in a university, I find that the power struggle of white clinicians not to share and having that power differential, they don't do the work, right? As far as going into discomfort. Whereas when you come from a marginalized background, you're close to it. And I think there's a quote that says people that are close to the problems, right, who have to live it day by day, are close to the solutions. So one of the things that I'm actually going to do tomorrow, because I have a very eclectic, white, Eurocentric counseling program that I work for, they don't really divulge. It's kind of like weird. It's their whole vibe. A lot of times is weird. I'm not really judging. It's just not me, and I think that doesn't help the young people. We have a lot of South Asian, a lot of Asian students that come through, a few Black that are there as well, and a lot of times the young people, they can't connect to the average white clinician. And I think part of doing the work is being able to kind of be open and be vulnerable. So what I plan to do is lead a journal exercise about mental health, maintenance plan. And if you want to share, we can share. But I've been chipping away at a lot of the white clinicians not saying anything, not putting themselves out there to be vulnerable. Because when you're Black or brown, like we're vulnerable just more naturally than the average white, clinician. So I want to be able to, use journaling, self-disclosure in this retreat that we're going to do, and talk about you can't preach what you don't practice. And that's the biggest fucking annoying thing I have to deal with, because a lot of times it's me, my Black labor, that has to be taught to do these types of things in a lot of these spaces, right? So I want to be able to try to, in my short time there, be able to chip away at the resistance that many white clinicians do to not be vulnerable. So that's what I plan to do tomorrow. As far as the practice is just leading a journal exercise that will hopefully chip away at the discomfort.
So, I'm thinking about the different modalities that you all might be learning about, and then, going on to pursue some more extensive training in. And some of these modalities will teach you a very curated structure for what therapy should look like, and measurable goals, and all that stuff. But that ain't necessarily how it works. And I'm looking for modalities. I lean into modalities that are more fluid. Like Jesse's talking about narrative therapy, boom. Strengths-based, boom. Relational, just how we fucking relate to people, boom. So I got trained in psychodynamic therapy, which really does sort of emphasize this idea like being a blank sounding board. But you get to tailor it what feels organic as a clinician. So I try to just if somebody shows up to the space, that's all you need to do to have a meaningful session. And whatever questions you ask or don't ask, like something's happening there. So just know that there's a lot of ways to do it. A lot of people tell their story non-verbally, but something's happening as soon as they show up. And that's really what it's about. So, big believer in trusting the process.
I know we're getting over time. As you were speaking, I thought of something tangible. So I just facilitated this training yesterday in my organization. And I'm gonna drop it. This is a check-in prompt that I got from the Liberation Academy. If folks are unfamiliar with Genesis Institute, check out Genesis Institute. I'm part of their year-long Liberation Academy. This is the first time that they're doing this, and they're gonna continue to do it in the future. But it's been a dope opportunity to just connect with healers of all different kinds, folks that utilize psychedelic plant medicine, Reiki practitioners, folks that are experts in body-based work. And it's just been dope to connect with healers from a series of different modalities. But this is our check-in. And every time I do this check-in in like a professional workspace, someone always cries, because there's something about like all these folks that we don't talk about, like bringing in our family, bringing in our community, bringing in our ancestors into the space. And the last prompt is, who are your people? And that's intentionally vague, because like, who are they? Like, you can name them. You can talk about like what organizations you're a part of. You can talk about who are the folks that bring you love. Like, but I think in the same way that we're trying to create this healing space for the people we serve, we have to create those spaces for each other. And we have to show up in a way that's vulnerable and authentic and model that, so that we can know what it feels like to be in that space, so that we can also hold people in that space.
Thank you so much, y'all. Thank you for staying extra as well. I know we went to overtime. Appreciate everybody for staying on and being community with us. Claire just dropped in the chat. If you want to continue to support Melanated Social Work and the amazing work that they do, head over to their Instagram page, check them out. Go listen to their podcast, hit up their website if you want to connect as well. Buy some merch, support the work. Free look at that. I'm about to pick up mine soon right after this. Hit the Cash App, hit the Venmo. And of course, if you want to stay connected with amazing events like this, head over to the Silver GSA page. And if you want to stay up to date with what's going on with the strike and see how you can support that and be in solidarity, hit up that Instagram page in the chat. We're going to send out the recording soon with this information as well. Thank you all for being here tonight. And thank you especially to our guests for being in community with us.
For sure.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all for having us.
Appreciate y'all. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you all for your wisdom.
Yeah.
Oh, appreciate it.